A flag, which was the personal standard of Adolf Hitler, has turned up in a storeroom of a museum in Poznań, Poland. It seems as though the standard of Hitler had not been recognized for what it was. I need to point out before I go any further that this is not the blood flag, a central piece of the Nazi cult which went missing in January 1945. However, as far as I'm aware, there are no other Hitler standards of this size anywhere, although I wouldn't be surprised if some were still in existence in private collections in the United States or even other places. Indeed, I suspect the blood flag could be in a private collection in the United States as well. There are, however, smaller pennants of the type that might have been used with vehicles. For example, we can see here in this 1937 photograph with Mussolini taken in Berlin's Feststrasse during the Italian dictator's visit of that year to Germany. The flag that has turned up in Poznań will remain hidden in secret. The National Museum in Poznań has announced that it fears that putting it on display could mean that it could become an object of worship for neo-Nazis, and that any exhibition with it needs to be very carefully thought out. The standard is apparently in excellent condition. The find was made by art historian Alexandra Paradowska while researching an exhibition she was preparing in Poznań on everyday life under Nazi German occupation during World War II. The National Museum in Poznań has a large collection of items, and she noticed that one was labelled in the catalogue entry as German banner from the Second World War. This was believed to have been the property of Gauleiter Arthur Greiser, who headed the Reichsgau-Vaterland, of which Poznań was the capital. The standard had been found in the Poznań Opera Hall in the 1960s and was then transferred to the museum store. Why it should have been in the Opera Hall is beyond me. I can only surmise that should Hitler have visited Poznań, then maybe he would have liked to have gone to the opera, as he was quite keen on visiting the opera. He did use his standard at the opera, and here's a photograph to prove it. Paradowska was able to recognise the standard as being Hitler's personal standard. Hitler introduced this standard after the death of President Paul von Hindenburg in 1934 when he became the Führer. This type of standard was sometimes used to show that Hitler was in attendance at rallies, meetings and other events in his official role. I had a look through my collection of Hitler photographs, and the earliest I can find dates to the 11th of September 1935 when Hitler used it at Nuremberg, although it was not on his car for this famous photo of him saluting next to the blood flag that year. On the 1st of May 1936, Hitler made a May Day speech in Berlin, arriving with the pennant on his car. We can see the standard in the crowd during the Berlin Olympics in 1936. Here, it is being used at the Berlin rally at the time of a visit by Mussolini. And continuing the Italian theme, here's the standard in Rome in November 1940. This was at the funeral of Arturo Bocchini, who died aged 60 on the 20th of November 1940. He had been the chief of police under Benito Mussolini as from September 1926 until his death. I previously mentioned him in my video on Margarita Himmler. He met the Himmlers during their 1937 holiday tour through Italy. Himmler visited Poznań several times. Indeed, it was here during a speech that he publicized the Holocaust to those around him. Hitler probably passed through Poznań in transit in September 1939, and it would seem that a visit was hoped for in 1940, but he didn't come. Greiser wanted him to visit and attempted to pass himself off as a Nazi right to the core, but the Führer never wanted to visit his fiefdom in the Warthegau. Nonetheless, Greiser no doubt kept the standard on standby just in case Hitler popped round. At least that's my interpretation. Perhaps more will come to light of the history of this standard. The Red Army said that it had a Hitler standard which was then used in the Moscow Victory Parade. However, that wasn't the Hitler standard, but the standard of the 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, which had minor differences. Freeze the video and see if you can spot them. Incidentally, in the photograph of the 1945 Red Square victory celebration, we can see here 2 cavalry standards of the Prussian Royal Army from 1860 and 1890, and the banner of the Landwehr militia of the Prussian Army of 1860. I presume that the Red Army looted these out of museums and were not carried into battle. However, there is a chance, albeit small, that the Red Army did capture a genuine Hitler standard. Around 500 such standards and banners were put in storage in the Soviet Union. Some of these were then sent to the occupied states. East Germany got more than 100 banners, and Bulgaria and Poland got some too. I suppose there is an outside chance that a real Hitler standard should have been transferred to Poland, but I can explain why it should have ended up in the Opera House in Poznań. I prefer the Greiser explanation, but out of fairness, I want to give all the possibilities that I can think of. If you have any suggestions as to why Hitler's standard should have been in the Poznań Opera Hall, then put them in the comment section. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, then you might want to subscribe. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday, 2000 hours. I'm based in Poland and in Germany, so that's 2000 hours my time, so it's going to be different times in different places. I quite often upload at other times as well, and so if you'd like to know when I'm uploading, then clearly the best way of doing this is to subscribe and to press the bell. Ding ding. I had hoped for some time to be able to present more news items like this. I can't really do a news channel, but because there's times of the year when I just can't do anything on my history channel at all because of my work, I will put up, of course, news items like this as and when they are happening. Of course, history is a living thing. It's not something which is just confined to the past. Indeed, I see history as having 2 main benefits. One, it's something we do because it's entertainment. It's something which is interesting, but at the same time, it's something that we can learn from the mistakes of the past so they won't be repeated in the future. At least that is the theory. In practice, it doesn't work at all. Thanks for listening.